Deep Transmission, a story for sleep. Hello, dear friend. How are you this evening? I hope you've had a gentle day. And if you haven't, I hope you're ready to leave it all behind for a little while. Thank you so much for tuning into Boring Sci-Fi for Sleep. It means the world to me that you're here. I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Maybe you're somewhere cozy and warm, or perhaps you're looking out at the stars, thinking about all the worlds we haven't explored yet. Wherever you are, I'm glad you found your way here. Tonight, we're going somewhere truly peaceful. We're going to dive deep into an alien ocean to explore a world that moves slowly and quietly, where light filters down through endless water and strange, beautiful creatures drift through the darkness. We'll experience it all through the senses of bioengineered explorers, living beings designed to swim and sense and share what they find. There's no danger here, no urgency, just the slow, gentle rhythm of the deep. So settle in. Let your breathing slow to match the pace of the tides. Close your eyes if you'd like, and let yourself sink down, down, down into the peaceful dark. Station Kepler. Orbit above Thalassa. 9. Dr. Yuki Tanaka sat in the observation room of Station Kepler, surrounded by soft blue light from the dozen screens that displayed the sensory feeds from the biodrones far below. The station orbited Thalassa 9, a water world in the Kepler 442 system, and for the past 2 years, Yuki and her small team had been exploring its depths through the eyes and fins and lateral lines and electroreceptors of creatures they had designed specifically for this purpose. The biodrones weren't quite fish and weren't quite machines. They were something in between, organisms engineered from the ground up to survive in Thalassa's deep oceans while maintaining constant neural link communication with the station above. Each drone was unique, designed for different depths and different sensing modalities, and each one transmitted everything it experienced directly to the researchers, allowing them to feel what the drones felt, see what they saw, sense what they sensed. It was the most immersive form of exploration humans had ever developed, and it was, Yuki thought, one of the most peaceful experiences she'd ever had. Tonight, though time was relative on a station orbiting an alien world, Yuki was connected to Specimen 47, a mid-level drone they'd nicknamed Echo. Echo was designed to explore depths between 2,000 and 4,000 meters, where some light still penetrated, but the pressure was enormous by Earth standards. Echo was sleek and silver, about the size of a large tuna, with enormous eyes adapted to gather every photon of available light. Yuki settled into her chair, adjusted her neural interface headset, and let herself sink into Echo's sensory stream. The descent begins. The first sensation was always temperature. Echo's body registered the water as cool but not cold, perhaps 8 degrees Celsius. For a moment, Yuki felt the station's air-conditioned environment overlapping with the ocean's embrace. And then her human sensations faded into the background as Echo's experiences took precedence. She was descending slowly from the upper layers where Echo had been resting. The water above was lighter, a deep blue-green that held the memory of Thalassa's sun, a K-type star that shone orange-red in the sky. creating light that filtered through the water in shades that Earth's oceans had never known. Echo's eyes adjusted automatically as the descent continued. The light changed from blue-green to deep indigo to something approaching violet. And everywhere, in every direction, there was life. Small organisms drifted past, some like jellyfish, translucent and pulsing gently, others like chains of luminescent cells, creating slowly moving constellations. Echo's lateral line, the sensory organ that ran along both sides of its body, detected their movements, the tiny pressure changes they created, the subtle currents they left in their wake. Yuki felt it all, the cool water flowing over Echo's scales, the subtle adjustments of fins and tail that kept the descent smooth and controlled, the constant input from dozens of sensory systems, all feeding information about this alien ocean. It was overwhelming at first, as it always was, but Yuki had learned to let the sensations wash over her without trying to analyze each one. She had learned to simply be present in Echo's body, to experience rather than think. The descent continued. 500 meters, 1,000 meters, 1,500 meters. The light faded slowly, but never completely disappeared. Even at 2,000 meters, where Earth's oceans would have been in absolute darkness, Thalassa's waters still held a faint glow. Bioluminescence from countless organisms creating a permanent twilight. The Midnight Garden. At 2,400 meters, Echo entered what the research team had come to call the Midnight Garden. It was a region where the ocean floor rose in a series of plateaus and ridges, creating complex topography that hosted extraordinary biodiversity. The first thing Yuki noticed was the forest. That was the only word that fit, even though these weren't trees or plants in any earth sense. They were tall, flexible structures that rose from the seafloor, some of them reaching 20 meters high. They swayed gently in the current, their surfaces covered in what might have been leaves, or might have been symbiotic organisms, or might have been something else entirely. The structures were translucent, and they glowed. Each one emanated soft light in shades of blue and green, and occasionally pink, creating a landscape that looked like something from a dream. Echo swam between them slowly, and Yuki felt the currents change as the structures redirected the water flow, creating eddies and streams that Echo navigated instinctively. Living among the glowing structures were thousands of other organisms, small things that resembled shrimp, with too many legs and eyes that reflected Echo's bioluminescence, larger creatures that might have been the thalassan equivalent of fish, though they moved with an undulating motion that was more like swimming snakes, things that hung in the water like bags of jelly, filtering nutrients from the current. Echo's electroreceptors picked up the faint electrical fields that many of these creatures generated. Each one created a unique signature, and Echo's brain, which was more sophisticated than any earthfish, designed to process and transmit complex data, catalogued them all. Yuki felt the information as a kind of spatial awareness, knowing where each creature was even without seeing it directly. A large creature drifted past, and Echo adjusted its position to observe. The creature was perhaps 3 meters long, with a body that seemed to be mostly gelatinous, supported by a framework of something rigid, cartilage or bone. or some other structural material. It had no obvious eyes, but it was covered in sensory organs that looked like small flowers, constantly opening and closing. The creature passed within a meter of Echo, and both organisms paused, assessing each other. Yuki felt Echo's sensors gathering data, chemical signatures in the water, electrical fields, subtle vibrations. The creature emitted a low-frequency sound, something Echo could feel more than hear. A greeting, perhaps, a warning, or simply acknowledgement of another living thing in the deep. After a moment, the creature continued on its way, moving with slow, graceful pulses. Echo watched it disappear into the glowing forest, and then continued its own journey. The shelf, at 3,000 meters. Echo descended further, leaving the midnight garden behind. At 3,000 meters, the ocean floor leveled out into a vast plain, covered in something that looked like sand, but felt different under Echo's sensors. Finer, almost like silt, with a composition that included silicon and calcium and other minerals that had settled out of the water column over millennia. Here, life took different forms. Instead of swimming through the water, most organisms lived on or in the seafloor. There were creatures that looked like flowers but were clearly animals, their petal-like appendages capturing whatever nutrients drifted by. There were things that burrowed, leaving trails in the silt, creating patterns that looked almost geometric. And there were the colonies, vast networks of interconnected organisms that spread across the seafloor like living carpets. Each colony glowed with a different color, some amber, some emerald, some a deep purple that was almost black. They pulsed slowly, rhythmically, as if breathing in unison. Echo swam low over one of the colonies, close enough that Yuki could see the individual polyps, if that was even the right word, that made up the collective. Each one was tiny, perhaps a centimeter across, but there were millions of them, all connected, all coordinating their bioluminescence in waves that rippled across the colony's surface. It was hypnotic. Yuki felt herself relaxing into the rhythm, letting Echo's body match the pulse of the light. There was something deeply calming about it, about witnessing this alien life form going about its existence in the deep, unbothered by anything beyond its slow, patient continuation. Echo's chemical sensors detected something interesting. The colony was releasing complex organic molecules into the water, possibly pheromones, or possibly waste products, or possibly some form of communication. Whatever they were, they created a subtle change in the water's chemistry that Echo could taste, a flavor that was both sweet and mineral, unlike anything Earth's oceans offered. The thermal vents at 3,500 meters. Deeper still. At 3,500 meters, Echo approached a region where the seafloor had fractured, allowing heat from the planet's interior to escape. Thermal vents rose from the cracks, chimneys of mineral deposits that billowed hot water into the cold ocean. Even from a distance, Echo's temperature sensors detected the gradient. The water here was warmer, though still cool by human standards, perhaps 15 degrees Celsius near the vents, compared to 6 degrees in the surrounding water. That 9-degree difference was enough to create entire ecosystems. Around the vents, life thrived with unusual intensity. The hot water carried dissolved minerals and chemicals from deep in the planet's crust, providing energy and nutrients that organisms had learned to harvest. There were tube-like structures clustered around the vent openings, waving slowly in the rising currents. There were creatures that looked like crabs, but moved more like spiders, their many legs picking through the rocky surfaces for food. And there was something large moving near the largest vent. Echo's sensors locked onto it, gathering data. The creature was perhaps 5 meters long, with a body plan that defied easy comparison to Earth life. It had a central mass that might have been a head or might have been something else entirely, and from this mass extended multiple appendages, some thick and muscular, others thin and delicate. The creature was anchored to the rocks near the vent, its appendages filtering the hot water, extracting whatever nutrients or energy it needed. Echo approached slowly, cautiously. The research protocols required caution around large organisms, not because they were necessarily dangerous, but because startling them could disrupt their behavior and prevent accurate observation. The creature seemed to notice Echo. Several of its delicate appendages reoriented, pointing toward the biodrone. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the creature flashed with bioluminescence, a pattern of lights that ran along its appendages like a wave, colors shifting from blue to green to orange. Echo's AI, enhanced brain, interpreted this as non-threatening, possibly even curious. Yuki felt Echo's response, a calm acceptance, a willingness to remain and observe. The two organisms, one natural and one engineered, regarded each other in the deep, sharing space in the eternal twilight. After several minutes, the creature returned its attention to the vent, and Echo slowly moved on, continuing its exploration. The abyssal plain at 4,000 meters. At 4,000 meters, Echo reached the limits of its designated exploration range. Here, the ocean floor stretched out in all directions, a vast plain of fine sediment that extended beyond the range of Echo's enhanced vision. The light was minimal, just the faint glow of scattered bioluminescent organisms and the very distant reflection of surface light that had somehow penetrated this far. But even here, at these crushing depths, life persisted. Echo's sensors detected movement in the sediment, small, burrowing creatures, their presence revealed only by the tiny pressure changes they created. There were things floating in the water column that might have been individual organisms or might have been pieces of marine snow, the constant rain of organic material from the upper layers. Echo settled onto the seafloor, resting on the soft sediment. The biodrone's body was designed to handle the pressure, nearly 400 times Earth's atmospheric pressure at sea level. But even so, Yuki could feel the weight of all that water above, the sense of being at the very bottom of a world ocean. It was peaceful down here, quiet in a way that went beyond mere absence of sound. The ocean absorbed everything, motion, heat, light, creating a stillness that felt almost sacred. Yuki let herself rest in that stillness, breathing slowly in the observation room while Echo's gills processed the water passing through them. Minutes passed, or perhaps hours. Time moved differently in the deep, stretched out by the slow pace of everything. A small creature, perhaps 10 centimeters long, translucent with trailing appendages, drifted past Echo's position. It moved so slowly that it seemed to be suspended in gelatin rather than water. Echo's eyes tracked it, but made no move to follow or investigate, simply observing, simply being present. The ascent. Eventually, as Echo's power reserves began to run low, the biodrone sustained itself on a combination of biological processes and stored chemical energy that needed periodic replenishment. Yuki initiated the ascent protocols. Echo's body knew what to do, adjusting its buoyancy and beginning the slow swim back toward the upper layers. The ascent was even more gradual than the descent had been. Rising too quickly could damage Echo's internal systems, and there was no rush anyway. Yuki let herself enjoy the journey, watching as the environment slowly changed. As the pressure decreased, as the light gradually increased, they passed back through the thermal vent region, still glowing and teeming with life, past the vast plains where colonies pulsed in the darkness, through the midnight garden with its glowing structures swaying in eternal currents, up and up, toward the twilight zone, toward the blue-green light of the upper ocean. Other organisms appeared with increasing frequency, schools of small fish-like creatures that scattered as Echo approached, larger predators that watched from a distance but didn't approach, drifting jellies that pulsed through the water, trailing tentacles that could have been meters or kilometers long. It was hard to tell in the vastness of the ocean. At 500 meters, Echo paused in a region where the light was stronger, where photosynthetic organisms, or whatever thalassa's equivalent was, could gather enough energy to grow. Here the water was filled with floating mats of what might have been algae, creating dense patches of life that hosted entire micro-ecosystems. Echo swam through one of these patches, and Yuki felt the texture of it, the slight resistance as the biodrone's body pushed through the dense growth, the chemical signatures of countless organisms all living in close proximity, the subtle temperature variations where the algae-like growth blocked or filtered the sunlight. It was beautiful, all of it. This entire alien ocean, so different from Earth's seas, and yet so fundamentally similar. Water, life, the slow cycle of energy and nutrients, organisms finding their niches and filling them, the patient persistence of biology in even the most extreme environments. Return to station. Finally, at 100 meters below the surface, Echo entered its holding pattern, waiting to be retrieved by the station's collection drone. Yuki gradually pulled back from the sensory stream, letting Echo's experiences fade as her own body reasserted itself. She opened her eyes in the observation room. The screen still showed Echo's view, the bright blue-green water of the upper ocean, the distant surface rippling with wave motion, the orange light of Thalassa's sun filtering down from above. But Yuki was back in her own body now, feeling the chair beneath her, the cool air of the station, the slight hum of life support systems. Dr. James Morrison, her colleague, sat at the adjacent console. He had been monitoring the feed, taking notes, marking timestamps for interesting observations that they would review later in detail. "Good dive?" he asked quietly. "Beautiful," Yuki said, and her voice sounded slightly distant, still half immersed in the memory of being Echo. The vent ecosystem is even more diverse than we thought, and I saw something at 3,500 meters that we need to study more. A large organism, possibly sessile, definitely complex, maybe intelligent even. Hard to say. James nodded, making notes. I flagged that section. We'll review it tomorrow. But now, you should rest. You've been under for 6 hours. 6 hours. It had felt like both longer and shorter than that. Time was strange when you were experiencing the world through another being's senses, especially a being that lived in the slow, patient depths where days and years blended together. Yuki stood, stretching her body, feeling the stiffness in her joints from sitting so long. She walked to the observation window, the real one, not a screen, and looked down at the Lhasa 9 below. From orbit, it was a perfect sphere of blue and white, clouds swirling in patterns that never repeated, oceans covering 97% of its surface. Down there, in those depths, Echo was being retrieved. The bio-drone would be brought aboard the collection platform, given nutrients and rest, and tomorrow it would dive again. And Yuki would dive with it, exploring another region, cataloging another 100 species, witnessing the slow, beautiful existence of an alien ocean. It was the work of a lifetime, of many lifetimes, really. They could spend centuries studying Thalassa and never fully understand it, but that was all right. The point wasn't to conquer or fully comprehend. The point was to witness, to appreciate, to share in the experience of life wherever it arose. Yuki returned to her quarters, lay down in her bunk, and closed her eyes. In her mind, she was still in the deep, still feeling the cool water flowing over scales, still watching bioluminescent colonies pulse in the darkness. It was the most peaceful meditation she knew, more effective than any technique she'd learned on Earth. Within minutes, rocked by the memory of gentle currents and the slow rhythm of the deep, Yuki drifted into sleep, dreaming of alien oceans and the beautiful, strange creatures that called them home. Rest now, dear listener. Let yourself sink down into peaceful darkness, like descending into a gentle ocean. Let the currents carry you. Let the quiet surround you. There is no rush, no urgency, nothing that cannot wait until tomorrow. Sleep and dream of beautiful things, of worlds we haven't discovered yet, of life persisting in impossible places. You are safe. You are held. Sleep well.